Hello, and welcome to BattleTech Faction Briefings. Today, we continue our time in the Periphery by discussing a Marian Hegemony unit. They began as mercenaries, they've been called the Caesar's Cavalry, and their unit name means by the river. They are the 6th Legio Ripariensis. The 6th Legio has a very elaborate symbol. It features a mounted legionnaire, brandishing a spear, and wearing a red cape. It merges the mercenary roots of Kavanagh's cavalry with the new Roman Empire theme of the Marian Hegemony. However, it has little to do with their name of Ripariensis. As for colors, they use royal blue with white trim. This gives them a more regal look that fits their role in the MHAF. The blue color may be one of the things that influenced the unit name of Ripariensis. There is very little history about this unit, but if you want to skip spoilers, go to the time listed. The 6th Legio were originally a mercenary unit under the name of Kavanagh's Cavalry. Their mercenary origins are unknown, but it is noted that they were usually working in the Periphery. In 3058, they were working for the Illyrian Palatinate, alongside the Arms of Thor mercenaries. The two units were the only major defense of the four-system nation, outside of small planetary forces. The cavalry was stationed on Illyria as the defenders of the capital. In early 3063, the Marian Hegemony would invade the Illyrian Palatinate. Kavanagh's cavalry would be stationed on Illyria, while the Arms of Thor were stationed on other worlds. The Arms of Thor would take heavy damage from the 4th Legio and flee to Illyria. They hoped to save the Palatinate from total destruction. When nearly 3 legions worth of Marian Hegemony troops arrived, Caesar Julius O'Reilly would offer terms to the mercenaries to join him or be destroyed. Meanwhile, the Arms of Thor would try to hold Illyria. They would tie up the 2nd Legio in a stalemate. However, Jared Kavanagh would take his troops and abandon his post. Then he would negotiate with Caesar O'Reilly to join the Hegemony forces. Kavanagh's cavalry would stay out of the majority of fighting as the Illyria campaign continued. The Arms of Thor would plan an assault to take down Caesar O'Reilly. At the same time, the cavalry would move in to the capital, pretending to be allies. Their lie worked, and they would capture the city, forcing the surrender of the government. They hoped that this would stop their fellow mercenaries from fighting a battle they could not win. Sadly, they were too late, as the Arms of Thor would be crushed by the overwhelming power of the MHAF. When the Palatinate was completely conquered, Illyria would become the district capital in this new region of the Marian Hegemony. As a reward for their efforts to end the fighting, Kavanagh's cavalry would travel with Caesar O'Reilly to Alfard. Once there, they were brought into the Marian Hegemony armed forces as the 6th Legio. At this time, they only had 13 mech warriors, but their meager forces would be enhanced with officers from the 2nd Legio and new graduates from the Marian Collegium Bellorum Imperium. They would also get the salvaged equipment from the Arms of Thor. They would only be at cohort level, but eventually they would get enough troops to boost them to 2 cohorts. As they built up, the 6th Legio would be stationed on Alfard with the 1st Legio. This was done for training reasons and to test the loyalty of these new troops. The Marian Hegemony would launch an invasion of the Circinus Federation in 3066. The 6th Legio would be part of the main assault force. They would fight on Blantlef in January, and the battle took several weeks. Upon defeating the garrison, they found out that many of the people viewed the 6th Legio as liberators, which made holding the world an easy job. As they remained on the world, the 6th Legio would get tied up by dealing with small-scale raids that were funded by the Free Worlds League and Magistracy of Canopus. Then, units from the McIntyre Home Guard and Black Warriors would attempt a false flag operation disguised as the 4th Legio. The ruse would be discovered, and the 6th Legio would fight them and win, but this would keep the 6th Legio from joining the other forces assaulting Circinus. The invasion would halt, and the Circinus Federation would hold together. The 6th Legio would defeat the counterattack and hold Blantlef for the Marian Hegemony. By 3067, parts of the 6th would still be stationed on Blantlef alongside Winfield's regiment. The remainder of their forces would be on Maximilian, another world captured during the invasion. Both these worlds would become part of the Illyrian district. They would use the salvage they got from the defeated Federation forces to rebuild. This would help them get up to nearly full strength, but only provided limited advanced tech. In February 3071, the 6th Legio would send a raiding team to the world of Neops 5. The world was known for building Star League-era equipment. When they arrived, the raiding team would go for the warehouses, but ran into 2 companies of Neops Association militia. Then, the raiders were hit from behind by the Black Heart Roses, which included Mark 22 Nighthawk battle armor. The defenders were skilled enough to take down the raid leader's Starslayer. This was enough to cause the 6th Legio troops to flee the world. The world of Huntington would get taken as the Free Worlds League fell apart. The 6th Legio would be placed as the garrison force, while the rest of the MHAF pushed forward into former League territory. When the invasion failed, the 6th Legio would raid Otzenbrug as a distraction. They would continue to hold Huntington as the remainder of the hegemony forces returned to their own territory. Even after the invasion was over, the 6th Legio would continue to raid non-hegemony worlds, while waiting on orders for the next invasion. By 3085, the 6th Legio would remain stationed on Huntington, Reykjavis, Hazeldine, and Illyria, as the border guards of the Illyrian district. In 3120, it would be discovered that the 6th Legio had been infested with spies from the Free Worlds League. This would lead to a purge within the unit to get rid of the 12 spies and discover the depths of the corruption within the unit. Afterward, Caesar O'Reilly would transfer the 6th Legio to the other side of the Marian Hegemony to keep them away from any influences that might come from the Free Worlds League. The 6th Legio would be stationed on Algeneb, Islington, and Marius Tiers. With a mostly understrength regiment, they would spend 20 years fighting pirates and raids from the magistracy of Canopus. However, their morale would not rise, as the sins of the past remained with them. A cohort of the 6th Legio would capture Thraxa in early 3150. This victory boosted the unit's aggression, and in April, the rest of the team would move forward to take Marantha and Gambalon. Marantha was an easy win, but Gambalon was a more difficult battle due to the efforts of the First Magistracy Highlanders. However, the 6th Legio would not hold the worlds for very long. In the first 2 weeks of May, the 1st Canopian Brigade, 1st Magistracy Highlanders, and 3rd Canopian Fusiliers would move in to recapture these worlds. With their greater numbers, they easily took back the worlds and drove off the 6th Legio. This was the beginning of the MAF counterattack. The 1st Magistracy Highlanders and Markson's Marauders would arrive at Islington. The Aerofighters of the 6th Legio would destroy one of the Marauders' dropships, yet the 6th Legio forces would still be driven off the world by the larger enemy force. The 6th Legio tried to keep the border together with other MHAF units, but the onslaught of the MAF dealt heavy damage. Over the years, there would be further encounters with the Canopian forces, but the 6th Legio would endure the challenges of the Dark Age. The Marian Hegemony would begin a new campaign against their enemies in 3152. The 4th and 6th Legio would be divided into 3 groups. They would battle the 1st Canopian Highlanders on the worlds of Booker, Gambalon, and Marantha. They had fairly quick victories. Half of the 6th Legio would be on Booker and attempt to hold the world, but the 1st Canopian Brigade would arrive to take it back. The 6th Legio troops were ready, but did not know that the 1st was loaded up with clan tech gear. The 3 cohorts would be heavily damaged, and a retreat was called. They would rush for the spaceport and have a running city battle. However, it wasn't long before they were encircled, and the commander of the ravaged 6th Legio forces surrendered. The other half of the team would be on Gambalon. When 4 regiments of Canopian troops arrived, a retreat was quickly called. They would escape back into hegemony territory with as much plunder as they could take. They would continue to run as the Canopian counterattack moved into hegemony territory. The fate of the 6th Legio is not looking good at this time. With half their forces gone and the magistracy of Canopus on the attack, they may not survive their upcoming challenges. However, this is where their history currently ends, and what will become of them has yet to be written. This is an odd unit. They are one of the rare mercenary forces that became part of the regular military. However, they have a shaky history, with many failures and plenty of corruption. The 5th Legio fell in 3148, and it seems likely the 6th will join them in the dustbin of history. Considering their reputation and their skill level, that might not be a bad thing. There is an odd assortment of pilots who have earned a reputation in the 6th Legio. Jared Kavanaugh, the last commander of Kavanaugh's cavalry who defected to the Marian Hegemony. He was an ambitious man who did everything for personal gain. He was even suspected of selling equipment on the black market. His greed and cavalier attitude gave him a bad reputation amongst the soldiers of the MHAF. Larazzo McNeil, the commander in the late Dark Age. He would have to deal with the destruction of morale that came with the revelation that many soldiers were traitors. He would lead many successful raids and would lead his forces in 2 invasions of the magistracy of Canopus. However, the damage sustained in 3152 may make him the last commander of the 6th Legio. Rudolf Kess. He was a liaison officer that was added to the 6th Legio upon their creation. He would observe the 13 members of Kavanaugh's cavalry to determine if they were loyal or not. Somehow, he was not aware of Jared Kavanaugh's illegal actions, but he did ascend to the rank of commander of the Prima Cohors in 3067. Onufrai Supotzik. He was a unit commander in the early Word of Blake War era. He would lead a team on a raid to get Star League era equipment from the world of Neops 5 in 3071. He would be overwhelmed by the defenders and would die due to an assault by battle armor. He piloted a Star Slayer. Dominic Brinkman, commander of the Prima Cohors in 3145. He would lead the troops on Booker in 3152 and face off with the 1st Canopian Brigade. His troops would take heavy damage, and eventually he would surrender, causing half the 6th Legio to be lost. The 6th Legio has Periphery mercenary roots, meaning their early equipment was well below standard. As part of the MHAF, their equipment improved, especially when using the salvage of defeated enemies. In most eras, they have 35% or less of their units featuring advanced tech. There are a few occasions where they surpass that number, but they have never reached greater than 50% according to all the TO&Es that exist. For many years, the 6th Legio would have a questionable loyalty rating due to the early bad leadership and reputation for corruption in several eras. This would add to the problems that would occur from the fact that the various cohorts usually never had a full complement of soldiers. They would have an auxiliary unit early on, and they would expand beyond that with an arrow fighter wing by 3067. The 6th Legio has a unique military doctrine. They begin with artillery barrages to disrupt enemy formations. This is followed up by lighter units moving in to cause chaos. That is followed up by heavier assets moving in to finish off the divided forces. This makes up for their lack of size, but does not guarantee a win, especially when the 6th Legio is divided up on different worlds. They are noted as having their own dropships, but have on many occasions had to rent jump ships due to the limited resources of the Marian Hegemony. Thus, they can only raid when the hegemony is not in the middle of a major operation, or if they can afford the rental fee. It is surprising that there are 2 short stories that reference the 6th Legio. Sadly, one of them is a Battle Corps story and hard to find, but the other is in the Tactical Operations Manual, which can be easily found. Beyond that, there is very little information about this unit. Despite some interesting missions, they are rarely discussed, and some books only have composition information. I chose the 6th Legio because of their origins. Low-rank mercenaries who became part of the MHAF sounded interesting. They even had fiction that tied into their adventures. But then I tried to do the research. I found very limited information on the MHAF, and only the occasional paragraph about the 6th Legio. In fact, only a few Periphery nations really receive much history. But, as always, I do enjoy providing focus onto lesser-known units, so that hopefully they can get the love they deserve. It will be some time before I do another Periphery video. Hopefully next time they will have some robust history. I do not recommend painting up a set of the 6th Legio, when there are several other Marian Hegemony units that have more importance to the nation's history. That being said, if you did paint up a set of the 6th Legio, let me know in the comments. Next time, I will be unveiling my secret summer project. I hope you are looking forward to it. Here is one last hint before the videos drop in July. As I wrap up, I want to say thank you for watching this video. I know the videos based around lesser known units don't get as many views as those of the big boys, so I'm glad you showed up and watched the whole video. May your weapons stay hot and your reactors stay cool. Please check out the rest of the BattleTech Faction Briefings videos on my playlist. Until we meet again, I'll see you at the tavern.